think takeover is extreme, especially when the State Department has not provided the proper oversight. So they're not making excuses for the school district, but if you're not holding the school district accountable, and then you're just coming in saying, hey, we're just going to take over without discussion, there's a problem with that. Part of that is a state responsibility as well, because if they haven't been turning in their audits, or if their audits look fishy for like 3 years, there's a whole department at the State Department of Education that should have caught that and been in that county, like, hey, what's going on?
It's the Logan Power Show. Inspirational and motivational. It's the Logan Power Show. Informational to help you grow. Logan Power Show.
And now the host, Calvin Logan.
Hi, Sylvia Wright here. South Carolina deserves new leadership. The current state superintendent of education has never been a teacher. She's never worked in the school system. And she wasn't even qualified to run for state superintendent of education. Her poor governance of the Department of Education has eroded trust, hindered the effectiveness of the department, and caused millions of dollars of taxpayer money to be lost through fraud, waste, and abuse. Our state senators don't even trust her. You deserve a superintendent who's highly qualified, who values trust, and will serve all students, parents, and educators instead of special interest groups. As a classroom teacher, school leader, and district leader, I built trust with all stakeholders. As your next state superintendent of education, I will continue to listen to students, parents, educators, support staff, community leaders, and business leaders. Let's find out the specific needs in each area to ensure that we are using resources efficiently and responsibly, and stop wasting taxpayer dollars. It's time to vote Ellen Weaver out of office. Join with me as I restore professionalism, trust, and integrity to the office.
Welcome to another edition of the Logan Power Show. The Word of God tells us in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 6, for the Lord gives wisdom, for his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with a leader who has dedicated her life to education, empowering future generations. As South Carolina faces important decisions about the future of our schools, we are honored to welcome educator and candidate for South Carolina Superintendent of Education, Sylvia Wright. Thank you for joining us today. All right, Ms. Wright. Yes, ma'am. How you doing today?
All right, I'm good. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure being back with you again.
Yes, ma'am. Part two.
Yes.
Yes,
after the winning.
After winning. You were definitely you came with a roaring standing ovation coming out the gate on June the 9th. Beat Miss Ellis heavily, and came out as very much a top candidate, top favorite. So you come out there showing that you have the support. And now we're moving into the actual primary, where we're getting into the electoral elections here in November, where the money meets the road and we're going to decide who is going to come out on top. So how has these couple of months been for you?
Well, before the primary, it was, constantly on the road, meeting and greeting people all over the state. Because I said, I've been traveling I've been to all 46 counties. After the primary, though, after winning, and I want to thank the voters for getting out to vote, because we made history during the primary with our numbers, and we need to continue that momentum. But after the primary, I actually had a chance to take a few days, like maybe 4 days, to recharge. But now I'm back on the trail. So I'm excited, just meeting more people. Because believe it or not, even though I've been on the trail for 2 years, there's still so many people who do not know who I am, what I'm running for, and that this position is even an electable position for state superintendent of education. So just educating voters and meeting more people and just hearing what their concerns are.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely hearing their concerns and actually understanding that those concerns are very warranted and they do play a bit pivotal role in deciding factors. For the deciding factor that we always know that voting does matter,
Mm-hmm.
voting does count, and that
Yeah.
does change everything and how we
Mm-hmm.
see things. So getting more in depth of questions that we always want to talk about, you decided to put your voice even a little bit more further.
Mm-hmm.
This month of June, we know Marlboro County had a what's called a overhaul, a actual takeover. And when it comes to the superintendent of Marlboro County, got removed. The actual um, board for that county had got disbarred, like removed apart, and there was a lot of money sort of not put in its right place based off that time. You were an advocate, um, another approach that a lot of people felt like, whoa, she's coming out here a little bit more differently. And how you said if I was a superintendent, how I would have handled it. Can you tell us what made you decide to go that approach, knowing that everyone doesn't take that stance? Because a lot of times when funds, money gets lost, those can impact. Just taking instance, what happened in the city of Chicago. City of Chicago, for instance, over $700 million in a deficit of an actual district that has over billions of dollars and has so much money. It's like, okay, you didn't have the budget to be able to function that. So can you explain to us why do you took that approach?
Yeah, so thank you for that. And the one thing that I want to highlight from, because I know you're probably referencing the latest article of my comments about the takeover in Marlboro County being extreme. And so I want to clarify that the state intervention was necessary. It was warranted. And the state had already taken over the financial aspect of the school board. And so the county chose the school district, the school board, they chose a superintendent who they wanted to, help them get out of the situation that they're in. But it's not the superintendent that the state superintendent, Ellen Weaver, wanted them to have. And so she ended up taking over the entire school district, like full control, because like I said, she already had control. The State Department of Education already had control over their finances. So the full takeover is the issue. The timing is what I'm saying is extreme because if they're already making some type of progress, they're already moving in the direction of, establishing who they want to help lead them out of, the financial situation that they're in and put the district back on track. And then the superintendent comes in and then yesterday, the person that she wanted actually was put in place. I don't know if you saw that, but I call that extreme because, like I said, there was already financial oversight, or not over, but financial. Um, the State Department had already taken over the financial portion. What I want to see different as state superintendent of education is getting in front of the situation, not being reactive. Because right now, our state law for school finance, it's basically set up to be reactive because school districts, they if there's financial mismanagement, things like that, they have like it's constant, like 3 years, right? Because I was looking at the progress of not just Marlboro County, but Jasper County and Williamsburg County and Allendale County. Like their financial situations have been going on for years, like the mismanagement of money, not turning in audits. Marlboro County, for example, they've had financial issues since 2017. And here we're in 2026. So right now, I feel like the legislation is weak and needs to be strengthened because a school district, as far as finances, they should not get to that extreme, like out of control for so long. Because we're basically how it's set up now is It's like a kid telling them, "Oh, if you don't straighten up, you're going to get time out," right? That's how I'm reading the law right now, how it's set up. It's constant warnings. Oh, if you don't do this, but there's no um consistent, or I shouldn't say consistent, but more what do you call it? Like a stricter timeline. Like instead of waiting a whole year for progress, how can we do like monthly or biweekly? More checks. And then as they look at the finances and how the district is meeting the metrics that are put in place, then scale back. So what I'm trying to say is we need to strengthen the transparency in our school districts, how the law's written. We need to intervene, be more proactive. We need to look at how we can amend the law to be more proactive, to give the Department of Education more authority to be proactive. And I'm not saying take over, because at the end of the day, we don't want a takeover. Now, if it's warranted after, all these additional things are put in place, then that's you know, my vision, let me say it like this. My vision for improving the finance law for schools is to make sure, number one, we're putting kids first, because that's our goal. And if reports and audits are being turned in where money's being mismanaged, where money is not going to the kids like it should be, then those are certain alerts or red flags that should be put in place sooner rather than later. And like I was saying, we need to be more proactive in the beginning and then scale back. Right now, it's reversed. We've scaled back. And then when it gets really extreme, that's when the state steps in. So that's my vision for, creating more, to improve the transparency in our school districts, to, you know, make sure that we're staying on top of the financial situation, and not being reactive, not as reactive as we are right now, the way that the law is written.
Got it. Understandable. And for those that may be unaware of what Mrs. Wright, is referring to, um, if you go back this month of June, I know that a lot of us would be watching, like, what are you talking about? Well, there's been multiple reports, multiple things that has been going on, that there's been a timeline of things that have been in place that have gotten to this point. And we're not talking about small numbers, small dollars. We're talking about millions of dollars that have misappropriated and can cause some backlash. And the backlash has come for Marlboro County School District. That is unfortunate. So with that being said, because you are taking on a tough task, because now you're
Mhm.
calling out, you're trying to hold people accountable. Then on top of holding people accountable, you're saying, well, maybe we need to do a little bit different. So from my understanding, make sure I'm clear. You are saying for people, for districts that may be teeter-tottering or having those red flags, instead of you giving them a macro type of space of help, we're gonna make this micro. I'm gonna take the bulls of the horn. I'm gonna go by month and sort of monitor a little bit more of the ones that are sort of like question marks, comparisons to the ones that are the macros of the Charleston counties, the Greenville counties. Normally those are budgets are a little bit different, but they sort of grasped and got it together. Um, Now the question I have for you: 4 years ago, Miss Weaver beat Miss Ellis over 200,000 votes. And the,
Mhm.
the incumbent who was third was only 27,000. So you got to come up with, in hindsight 2020, you got to come up with 200,000 people who say, you know what, you are the right candidate to get you over the hump. Because really, she was close to a million. The Miss Ellis only got maybe close to 730,000 at best. Great candidate, great person. I interviewed her in the Logan Power Show. But what's going to change the narrative to make you people say, okay, you're the right one, because we already know voting is sort of scarcity when it comes to the state of South Carolina. It is considered to be either you got it or you don't got it. And you have to have sort of like a motivation, a steamroll going. Like, South Carolina's a little bit different. The train may be coming, but when it does come through, that voting comes in and it hits like a roadblock, because what you think would have happened did happen. So what if, why should people say, we're going to give you this opportunity and you not squander it? Because people say, I've heard that before. I've heard that speech before, and can be considered to be the first. They've hadn't had a person, a superintendent of South Carolina, be actually an educator. That's not always the norm, that an educator has that opportunity, that has sort of gone through the ranks. Normally, people have skipped the ranks, and then now you're the South Carolina superintendent. But saying like you've gone through all these levels, you've seen it firsthand and given the opportunity. So tell us what would make it different. How are you to bridge the gap and get those 250,000 plus votes additional what already have come in this coming November?
Well, thank you. So one thing I do want to clarify is there have been superintendents who have been educators. What made Weaver different, number one, is she did not have her master's degree when she ran, so she wasn't even qualified to run for state superintendent of education. She's never been an educator or worked in the school system. So that's a number one stark difference. She's more a policy person, and I'm actually, like you said, I've gone through the ranks. First of all, I was raised in public schools, South Carolina public schools, from elementary to high school. I graduated from Fort Dorchester High School. And not only do I have that experience being a student, I have experience being an educator. Like you said, I was a classroom teacher, a department leader, an instructional coach, a school coordinator, and a district coordinator. So I've seen the school system at every single level. And what South Carolinians have to decide, because they've seen how a political superintendent, because that's what she titled herself, that's how she set herself apart from Lisa, because I've studied that race. And she offered South Carolinians a political superintendent, someone who wasn't tied to the school. This is what she's going to do: the privatization of schools, the book banning, the severing ties with librarians. Like, her political agenda is what she's pushing as a political superintendent. But South Carolinians have another option now. So the difference between the current superintendent and myself, like I just described, the political superintendent, but for me as an educator, I call myself the people superintendent, because for me, it's all about the people. It's about service. It's not about pushing an agenda. And there are three areas that are distinct that set us apart as far as, our plans for elevating education here in South Carolina. The first is literacy. Now, with the current superintendent, what's in place is, the letters training. She brought back the phonics of reading. And so with that, I agree with that. We needed phonics brought back into our schools. But where it falls short is, number one, it holds third graders back if they're not on grade level, okay, by fourth grade. And the issue with that is we have a teacher shortage in South Carolina, especially in our rural areas. So we're basically punishing third graders for, let me say this, because it's a real life experience. So I worked in the rural area, okay? And in the rural area, we have, like I said, it's the teacher shortage is worse in our rural area. So third graders, they don't have a full-time teacher. They have a long-term sub, or they might be watching a teacher on a screen and have a teacher's aide in the room to assist, but there's no real instruction. So we're holding, and these third graders do not pass the SC Ready. They can do the summer school, and they still might not be successful because they don't have that basic foundation, because they haven't had a teacher, right? And you can't make that up in like 2 months. So I bring that up because we are punishing students. We are punishing these third graders for adult situations. So we need to you know, recruit more teachers. And that's something that's missing with the current superintendent. What's the plan to recruit? And so my plan for recruiting more educators, besides the pay raise, because it's more than just about money, having incentives, talking to the school district, seeing what incentives we can offer for teachers, improving our working conditions for our educators. And this speaks to my school safety plan that I want to implement as well. Because with school safety, it's more than just an intruder. It's about the building. It's mold in the building. When it rains, the kids having to be rerouted to the other side of the building, disrupting learning, bullying, um, student misbehavior. All of these things need to be addressed when we talk about school safety. And it also ties into not only recruiting teachers, but retaining teachers. So that goes hand in hand. But back to teacher recruitment, I want to partner with our technical schools and our universities. And in exchange for people entering into the field of education, we pay for their tuition. And so it would be sort of like a revision of our teacher loan forgiveness that, that South Carolina had in place. So looking at expanding that. But that's my ideas for teacher retention and recruitment and how we that's a difference. Another difference, again, like I said, school safety, like a whole approach to school safety. Right now, what I've seen with the current superintendent, the focus, the provisos, the grants have been more on the infrastructure of the buildings, like bulletproof windows and things like that, the doors and also the governor, how he has approved the SROs, like they had received grant money to get an SRO in every building. But these things are like surface level. We need to dig deeper. What about the kids who are being bullied? The social emotional learning as well. Teaching students how to, giving them strategies to deal with their emotions, right? More proactive techniques instead of being reactive as far as, infrastructure, focusing on infrastructure. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying we just need to focus on the infrastructure. And in addition to that, also start focusing on the root causes of why a student might, go become a mass shooter. Having more school counselors and expanding our guidance counselors team to not just the guidance counselors, especially in the rural areas, taking on all these responsibilities, wearing all these hats, providing more support for not only, our students, but for our teachers as well. And then another thing, going back to literacy, like I said, we talked about uh, the phonics, science of reading, and third grade retention. But another thing that the current superintendent focuses on is the teacher, like training teachers. The component that's missing from the literacy initiative, which, again, this is the difference. These are the two pathways that South Carolinians have a choice to make. With my literacy initiative, it's going to focus on early childhood education. Because like I said, if we're waiting until third grade, right, kids are already behind, number one. Number two, if they don't have the teachers, the qualified, highly qualified teachers in the classroom, giving them that instruction to, pass or learn the material, then that gives them a disadvantage and further, puts them behind their peers. So with early childhood education, my plan is a universal pre-K for our 4-year-olds. Right now it's income based. And if you don't qualify for income based, then you have to pay for private preschool. And that leaves a big gap in the middle of students who don't have access to early childhood education, that pre-K. So with the universal pre-K, it doesn't matter your income. All 4-year-olds will have access to this foundation, this educational foundation. And then when they get to kindergarten, we can continue to build on that. And that way the goal is to make sure that all kids have a fair shot. So not only am I going to focus on early childhood education with my literacy initiative, I'm going to reconnect with our librarians, the Librarians Association that she severed ties with. I want to reconnect with them, and we do a literacy initiative, a reading initiative all over the state to restore the joy of reading. Because right now there's like this negative vibe because of the book banning, and so I want to change that narrative and restore the joy of reading. Now, as far as the book banning goes, I also want to push that back down to the local level because right now we have that statewide book ban. And so that way the local superintendents or the local school districts, they can form their committees with their teachers, librarians, parents. They can have their own committees and decide what they want to ban in their communities because that's their kids, their grandkids, that's their community. And so to ban something at the state level, that's taking away that local control. So I want to restore local control. And the second part of that would be implementing a program similar to Wise Owl. And what Wise Owl does, it connects to the school districts, the libraries, and it allows the parents to see what their children are checking out. And it allows the parents to ban or block books that they don't want their kids to check out. So not only do I want to return the book, the book banning process back to the local area, I want to put more power in the hands of the parents to decide what books they want their kids to check out. And also giving them that power to monitor what their child or their grandchild is reading. So these are part of my vision for really elevating education here in South Carolina. And it's two different pathways. And South Carolinians, they have a choice. In November, do they want to continue down this pathway of book banning with the current superintendent of education? This focus on an agenda versus focusing more on student-centered, teacher-centered, family-centered. How can we work together to elevate education in South Carolina instead of a divisive agenda?
Make a very strong point. Um, just piggybacking off of the teacher retention, just saying, for instance, say a lot of teachers now that are coming into the field did not come in there initially to get their degree
Mhm.
as a teacher. Alternative education.
Mhm.
Alternative education is kind of expensive. You think
Mhm.
some programs cost about $4,300, sometimes 4,500 to go through their program after you've gotten past your praxis and the PLT, Principles Learning test as well. And that is a beast, just challenges enough to be able to just passing and getting a certain score to getting that is one challenge. The other
Mhm.
challenge is that we're seeing is that there are some that can pass the test but can't function in the classroom.
Right.
And some of us that can may not be really good at the test, but can function in the classroom and teach it and be graded at the same exact time. How are you able to bridge that gap? Because there seem to be sort of like a money grab when it comes to the praxis exams, what score you got to get on a national level. And we talk about, for instance, how can we gain more teachers? Well, we talk about finances. That's one discrepancy. The other is trying to even get to the road to success and even becoming a teacher, getting to the praxis exam, figuring out based off of how many classes you took in college will determine how you become a teacher. And then you mentioned about rural areas. Um, how also is this all going to work from a financial standpoint? Because most of the time, if you are a teacher and you are going to decide, I'm going to teach at a rural school, the biggest thing is distance. And if I
Mhm.
decide to get involved in the community, it's the financials to be able to sustain myself to even survive in a rural area. Because you think about where's my local grocery store, where's the nearest things that I can do? Am I new to the area? How is it gonna benefit myself? There's one thing saying teacher is single, say they're married, say they got their own family. Okay, is it gonna work? Family and collaboration. So what when you mentioned the teacher retention, How are we able to bridge the gap between the traditional person that's trying to become a teacher and going through the process and giving a good pathway of helping them pass the test, do what they got to do just for there. But in regards, there's the alternative, which has shown success, but there's still a gap to where we're making it hard for those individuals to say they even want to stay in the fight, to say, okay, why am I even in it if it's so expensive? So how, like, based off what you're seeing, how are you able to sort of balance that if you're given the opportunity as superintendent?
Thank you. So you brought up two big issues that I've been hearing as I've been campaigning. The first one is the praxis exam, and like the barriers that prevent teachers who really want to teach. I remember there was someone who reached out to me. Her daughter loves working in special education, but she could not pass the praxis. She failed by 1 point, and she got kicked out of the program. And so it's things like that. How can we provide like more opportunities for people to get like tutoring or have classes? Because one thing is you can have classes, but if it's a cost for the class, then that's a barrier. So how can we provide the support for the teachers, to the people who want to be educators, to pass the praxis, and also not let the praxis be that initial barrier that automatically eliminates them. Give them time. So if you, for example, the situation, she failed it by 1 point. Instead of her being kicked out of the program or being eliminated, allowing her to continue with the program, and then give her like 5 years with tutoring, with classes, with supports to help her pass the praxis. And so that's one way. Instead of just automatically allowing that barrier to eliminate teachers, there needs to be more flexibility and an opportunity for them to get tutors and work through whatever they're not understanding. Because not everybody's a good test taker. That's an issue. Another issue is seeing what the score is. What is our passing score? Because each state is different. So evaluating that. And another part of that is not focusing solely on the test, on the praxis. There are other metrics that we can use to determine, like a composite score or something for teachers to be certified. And so those are some of the things that I was thinking of as far as when it comes to those barriers, especially with testing. Now, the second thing is that I've been hearing on the trail, like you've been saying, in these rural areas, there's nothing for people to do, especially, or I shouldn't say it like that, but people with families. If they don't have like a chamber of commerce that is active, where, they don't have community centers where there's, or playgrounds or parks or things happening to entertain maybe them and their spouse or them and their family, then people aren't going to want to move out there. And so what I've been talking to, or who I've been talking to, like mayors and council members, and I think part of the issue is there needs to be more collaboration and communication between the elected officials, like the mayors, those local elected officials, and the school district, and also the State Department. Like, how can we support each other? For example, in Reedville, I was speaking to a parent and he said, there's no library in Reedville, and he said he would love for there to be a library for his kids to go to. So if that's an example of something that, we can work together to maybe to provide a bookmobile or something like that. How can we utilize grant funding? Because that you talked about funding. There's actually a rural recruitment initiative that provides millions of dollars to recruit teachers to our rural areas. The question is, where is that money going? I can tell you 2 million of that went to international teachers, and 31,500 of that went to new teachers. So how can we do a better job? And there are other things too that money went to, but I'm highlighting that Because how can we do a better job of homegrown teacher pipeline? That's going to be my focus too, part of my initiative for rural recruitment. Because one thing I found that the teachers who live in their communities are personally invested in the children in the community. And so how can we provide more incentives or stipends or a bonus or something? If we can't do a stipend or a bonus, is it childcare? Is it housing? What incentives can we provide to keep teachers that live in the community to work in their communities? And so those are some of my ideas for teacher retention and recruitment.
All right, you hitting the nail on the head. That's a tough topic. And for those that are not that may be unaware, if you are going for alternative certification, means you got a degree not in education. And they pretty much look at what your degree is and basically the classes you have will determine what you can teach. Either it be secondary or it could be elementary. And there are some um, very, very different programs, alternative programs that are there. But it is not a small penny, it's a hefty penny. Because you're paying monthly, and then after that, there's some other processes that go into it, and then you have to continue paying it down. Um,
And that would
so
also go into part of that recruitment that I was talking about as far as funding. If to retain teachers, to recruit and retain, like those are some of the fees that can be covered if they agree to stay and teach in the district for at least 5 years. So that could fall under that because the whole thing is the whole goal is to recruit and retain, whether it be, like you said, through PACE, the alternative certification, or through your traditional university or college. So that's a
yeah,
great point.
absolutely. Now there is a huge discrepancy between you and the certain incumbent when it comes to you're a big component of the public sector. He's a
Mhm.
big component of the choice. And that is a huge argument
Yeah.
to parents that say, hey, um, this is the local school that my child is zoned for. But based off of what I'm seeing, I don't believe that that's going to be a good fit for my child. So I'm going to try travel blah blah distance to go there. You have been a component in saying let's work on the public sector and let's help those that are not doing well and the ones that are doing well sort of bridge the gap.
Mhm.
How are you going to talk to that argument down to some parents that be saying, well, I don't have that time to wait until that particular thing does manifest because my child's in this stage of their life and we're not in the we see the vision but maybe we just can't wait that process. So how can you speak to those parents to sort of saying, okay, your vision is going to align with what they have currently provided right now?
Okay, so I think, well, I'll start with this. I am for parent choice. I believe parents have a right to send their kids to private, public, homeschool, charter, wherever they want to wherever they choose to send their child. And as far as the voucher system goes, the school choice, how it's currently modeled, I think what some people don't truly fully understand is the vouchers are only for like 10,000 kids. We have almost 800,000 students in South Carolina. So when we talk about school choice as far as the vouchers goes, there's no guarantee that your child is going to receive that voucher. So the voucher program is not a true solution to improving or elevating education in South Carolina. And it's also taking money away from our public schools. If you look at Fort Mill, for example, that's one of the latest articles where, there was the budget mishap from the State Department of Education, And now they've got to scramble and figure out how they're going to make up millions of dollars in their budget. Greenville has lost money because enrollment has decreased. You have school districts all over the state whose enrollment is decreasing, taking money away from our public schools. And when you take money away from the public schools, it takes away the funding for programs like the arts, band, uh, drama, sports. When you take away money from public schools, it doesn't only affect the programs, it affects the support that your child is going to receive or not receive. And so that's why I'm more of a proponent for public education, because with public education, it services everyone. Do we need to do a better job with public education? Yes. And that is what my vision is. That's part of my vision, is improving or elevating public education. And we do that by fully funding education. And what I mean by fully fund, I'm not saying just throw money at it. What fully funding means is having those conversations with the school districts, the superintendents, the teachers, the parents, the communities, the students, the people who are doing the work. Find out what their needs are. What resources do they need? And then providing those specific resources to help them with their vision for their district, for their schools. And then progress monitor that. So again, not just giving money, what metrics are we going to look at to see if what you're doing is working and not working? If it's working, perfect. Let's continue to build on that and sustain it. If it's not working, then what do we need to change? What do we need to do differently? And this is continual. This isn't like a one-time thing, because for me, it's all about growth. We have got to grow our students, starting from early childhood education, continuous growth, not just this teach to the test mentality that we're under right now. I want to switch that to more of a growth model where we're constantly looking at how we can improve for our kids, for our students. And they also look at that data as well. And they start becoming, they start taking more ownership of their learning instead of being passive receivers, just going through school. It's time that our kids actually do school. They have an active participating role consistently. I'm not talking about, collaborative being, collaborative learning one day, and then, the other days they're just sitting in rows. I'm talking about project-based learning, creating a curriculum where the students are seeing how the real world connects to what they're learning. Instead of us just saying, well, this will help you in the future. No, how does it help me? Showing them how it helps them, merging that curriculum. So that's part of my vision.
All right, that's part of your vision. Final question. Someone is watching now. They got to make it. They got to make a decision in November. They have to make a decision in November of who's the right choice. We here at the Logan Power Show, we don't say who's right, who's wrong. We're just putting it out there, putting the candidates out here and saying, hey, let's talk to the people. So I want you to have the opportunity, a minute to tell people why you're the right fit to change the trajectory of South Carolina. Floor is yours.
Thank you. So, like I said earlier, South Carolinians have a choice for the future of education in South Carolina. The current superintendent, that party, they've been in control for over 20 years, at least 2 decades. And we're still at the bottom. We're still 43rd in education. So it's time for a change. It's time to focus not on a divisive political agenda or a political plan. It's time to restore the focus back on our children, restoring those collaborative relationships that have been dismantled by the current state superintendent of education, and reconnecting with librarians, for example, that association, and truly elevating education through literacy. And we do that by everybody working together. It's not a teacher's fault, it's not just, we're not just blaming groups. We're collaborating, working together to improve literacy, working together to improve school safety, and working together to provide that teacher recruitment and retention, changing the narrative of education, And that's how we're going to elevate education from 43rd to 1st. That's part of my vision. So that's the difference between us. We can continue down this path of vouchers where only a certain amount of students have access to education. There's a divide that's being created, and it's not black and white. It's have and have not. That's the path that we're heading down right now in South Carolina when it comes to education. But we have a chance to change the direction and focus on all kids, giving all kids an opportunity to have a fair shot to be successful in South Carolina, to be successful, to have a future where they can do and be whatever they want to do and do whatever they want to do and be whatever they want to be. So that's my vision for the future of South Carolina.
We heard it first live here at the Logan Power Show. As we conclude today's conversation, we are reminded of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, which says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. We want to thank Ms. Sylvia Wright for joining us and sharing her vision for education in South Carolina, regardless of where our viewers stand politically. We encourage everyone to stay informed, stay engaged, and exercise the right to vote. Thank you for tuning in to the Logan Power Show, where we strive to inform, inspire, and impact lives, one conversation at a time. Till next time, God bless. Remember to keep the faith and keep moving forward.
It's the Logan Power Show. Inspirational and motivational. It's the Logan Power Show. Informational to help you grow. Logan Power Show.